Well, hello everybody. Listen, let's do a little science lesson today. And this is for everybody, for all grades and your families too. And the reason why I decided I would do this science lesson today is because last night we had a thunderstorm around here. And as we go into April, April is the month where we start to become aware of the kind of severe weather that occurs in the spring around here. Well, the first thing I want to give you some information about are thunderstorms. So we had one last night, and we're liable to have another one tonight. On average, in the state of Ohio, we average about 30 to 50 days out of the year that we have thunderstorms. And a typical thunderstorm is about 15 miles in diameter. That's cell of that storm. And it lasts on an average about 30 minutes. So they can be pretty fast moving events. Nearly 1,800 thunderstorms occur at any moment around the world. That means like right now there was 1,800 thunderstorms somewhere on this planet. And that adds up to about 16 million thunderstorms a year. Of the estimated 100,000 storms that occur in the United States annually, about 10% of those are classified as being severe. So that means 10,000 thunderstorms in this country every year are very severe and can cause injury and damage. And one of the most dangerous parts of a thunderstorm is lightning. What causes lightning? Well, lightning occurs when air rises and descends, hot air and cold air mixing together within that thunderstorm. And you'll hear the weather people on TV talking about unstable air, and that's what they're talking about. And in the process of that air being unstable, what it does in the movement, it separates negative and positive charges. And because different unlike charges attract each other, a negative charge will seek a positive charge will seek a negative charge. Just like magnets, you put a negative and a positive together and they stick, they attract. If you put a negative and a negative or a positive and a positive, they repel each other. So what happens is, because of the separation of those charges, a spark occurs. And that spark is lightning. And lightning can go from the cloud to the ground. If the cloud is positively charged, it will seek the negative charge of the earth, and vice versa. So if there's a positive charge building up near the earth, it can jump actually up to a negatively charged cloud. So the lightning can go in both directions. Some safety tips. And this is important because every year, any number of people in this country are injured or killed by lightning strikes. Many years ago, I was out on a golf course and a thunderstorm just came up out of nowhere. And I was with a friend of mine, and we were just getting ready to tee off onto one of the holes there when this storm hit, and we were kind of contemplating what we should do, seek a shelter somewhere. And about the time we had that thought, a bolt of lightning came down literally within 20 feet of where we were at and exploded the tree it hit. We thought we were dead. It was really a surreal experience to have lightning hit that close to where we were standing and then feel that residual charge passing right through our bodies. So, some safety tips. First thing, you want to avoid water, especially swimming pools. If a storm comes up and you're in a pool, get out of the pool. Why? Because water is an excellent conductor of electricity. It'll move through the water very quickly. Doesn't offer any resistance at all. Easy place to get hurt. Same thing with metal objects. And if you see something like a electric power line down, you know not to touch that. But you don't want to touch anything metal, because metal, again, is a conductor. It's not an insulator, it's a conductor. And the electricity will just run right through that faster than you can imagine. Some unsafe places to be in a thunderstorm is in a tent. Why? Because there's metal poles that hold that tent up. You get lightning. Oh, that would be just unbelievable. Golf carts, small open shelters, especially do not stand under trees, especially a tall tree. Avoid wide open spaces, and you don't want to be high up somewhere because you're just that much closer to where the lightning may possibly discharge. Always try to get into a building or some fully enclosed shelter. Even your car in a thunderstorm is a safe place to be rather than standing out in the open. If lightning strikes are nearby, avoid direct contact with others. You could pick up a very strong static electrical charge. If you've got any metal objects in your pocket, take them out. You don't think about things like that. Try to get close to the ground. And if you're in the woods, if you're unlucky enough to find yourself in the woods during an electrical storm, don't seek out the tallest tree. Seek out the smallest tree or a bush and try and seek shelter underneath that. Now, some tips if you're inside your house. Avoid water. And that means the spigots, the faucets in your sinks, showers, baths, even your laundry. Stay away from open doors or windows. Avoid using a landline phone during a lightning outbreak. Why? Because a landline phone is connected to wires. The wires pick up the electricity, can send it right through that phone and electrocute you. As an extra precaution, you should unplug expensive electric equipment like your computers and TVs, things like that, because the electrical system is all connected to a grid of wires, and electricity can back right up through them wires, and there goes your TV. It's always smart to have a surge protector if you're going to plug them in. Stay inside till the storm is past. How many times have you thought the storm was over, you open the door and you step outside and kaboom, a big crash of lightning and thunder comes out of nowhere? Make sure it's safe to go outside. Now, what happens? What do you do if somebody is struck by lightning? Well, obviously, the first thing you need to do is call 911. You need to get some help. But there's some first aid that you can do. If electricity, our body is run by little electric charges that go through our nervous system. And so those little electric charges control things like our ability to breathe. It controls our ability for our heart to pump. So when we get electrocuted, whether it's by lightning or even electricity in the plug in the wall, it's going to affect one of those two systems. It's either going to interrupt our heart beating or interrupt our ability to breathe. And so being able to recognize what to do can save someone's life. So the first thing you do is check. Do they have a pulse? Is their heart beating? Then check to see if they're breathing. Come up close to their nose. You can feel a person's breath, or you can feel their chest rising and falling. So you can tell if they're breathing. Now, if either one of those two is not happening, then there's two different ways you can assist them. If they've stopped breathing, then you have to initiate mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. You've got to get some breath into that person. And you do that until first responders arrive. Same thing if the heart stops. CPR. Chest compressions. If they're breathing, don't worry about the breathing part. Just keep compressing into that person's heart to keep that blood moving until first responders get there. So that's the thunderstorms. And we're going to be seeing more thunderstorms as the weeks pass by, so try to remember some of those safety rules. Now, the next thing that occurs, and occurs most frequently, I'm looking at a statistics chart, and for my 6th grade math students, statistics. I'm telling you, kids, they're everywhere. You never know when you need to be smarter than the average data chart. And I'm looking at this chart of statistics here, and I see that the busiest season in Ohio here for tornadoes occurs between April and doesn't taper off until the end of June. So April, May, and June, those 3 months, that's when the greatest amount of potential tornadoes can occur in Ohio. What do we know about tornadoes? Well, how do they form? They form when two air masses collide with one another, one being warm, one being cold. So when cold, dry air meets with warm, moist air, you have perfect conditions for a funnel cloud to be created. And the funnel cloud is created by a gust of warm air rising. It rises in a spiral motion, and the air pressure inside the funnel is very low. Now, we're talking about those low pressure and high pressure systems that you see on weather maps when the weather person's on TV. And what it means is if it's a high pressure, the pressure outside is greater than what's next to it. And the pressure goes from high into the low because it tries to seek a balance. Well, in that turmoil, you could end up with a tornado. The cold air is rotating around the lower pressure of the inside of the funnel. The outside air spins into the hole, and as it's spinning, trying to balance itself into the lower pressure of the inside of the tornado, it'll pick up anything. It'll pick up cows, cars, people walking by. Just like the Wizard of Oz, off you go. So tornadoes are very dangerous, very powerful. A lot of energy exists within a tornado. Tornadoes can spin in speeds up to more than 200 miles per hour. Now, unless you've been in the middle of something at 200 miles per hour, you can't even imagine what that must feel like. But I can assure you, without having been there myself, that it's probably uh, amazingly unbelievable. It also feeds off of the energy of those thunderstorms. So tornadoes often follow the paths of a thunderstorm. It's usually accompanied by hail, that severe thunderstorm, and high winds. And hail is one of those things that you almost always see occurring before a tornado has, when the conditions are favorable for a tornado to form. They don't last very long when they do form because of the instability of it. It really is nature trying to balance itself back out again. So they can come up very quick, they can go down very quick. Sometimes, though, they can last for a while. So anyhow, April through mid-July, that's about the worst time for Ohio. And believe it or not, tornadoes usually occur between 2 o'clock in the afternoon and 10 o'clock at night. So that window of time, and it has to do with what the relative temperatures are, along with all of the other weather conditions that exist at that particular segment out of a day. They can strike anywhere. I mean, anywhere. It doesn't matter if the conditions are right. And in Ohio, we average, looking at that data again, kids, we average about 19 tornadoes a year. So how do you prepare for a tornado? Well, the National Weather Service, which tracks tornadoes, they track them on radar, and we've got some great weather radar out there these days. They'll either issue a watch or a warning. And they're two very different things. And you'll see it scroll across the top of your TV that the National Weather Service has issued a tornado watch for Mahoning County or a tornado warning for Mahoning County. What you need to know is the difference between what those two things mean. A watch means the conditions are favorable, the potential is there that a tornado might form. And that means you need to be watchful. It means you need to be paying attention to the news blips coming across your TV. When you see a tornado warning, it's not time to break out a Monopoly game and chill out in the living room with your family. When you see a warning, that means a tornado has been sighted. It is imminent that you immediately seek shelter. Remember that. The warning is not just a casual thing. That means we're in trouble. You need to get safe. Seek shelter. Now, you see the charts I got behind me here on the board. There's a simple acronym, and it's DUCK. Now, I know you hear me walking around all the time at school going quack, 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 quack. DUCK. I picked that up when I got this lesson a long time ago to remind myself, duck. And what does that mean? Well, look at D. That means go down to the lowest level. If you have a basement, a cellar, get down to the lowest level because a tornado will tend to stay on the surface. U, get under something sturdy. Now, doorways in your home are built much stronger than sitting in the middle of the room. just a little bit of information. Get into a doorway, but get under something sturdy. Don't get under something that can break or fall and then injure you as a result of that. C, cover your head. That should just be logical, but we don't think about it. Cover your head. And if you have something you can cover your head with that won't injure you, then use that. But you want to protect this, because if you break this bad enough, not good. And then K, keep in shelter until you are certain the storm has passed. Again, don't open the door. Don't open windows. Don't walk outside to check. Because then you might just end up like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. And we certainly don't want that to happen. Some places are safer than others, so let's talk about that a little bit. Homes and small buildings. Go down to the lowest level and get as close to the center of the building as possible. Basements are always best, but if none exist, seek shelter in a windowless, remember, no glass. We don't want glass flying around. And the pressure, I can't express that strongly enough. There's great pressures at work in a tornado. It'll blow out a window in a heartbeat. So you don't want to be sheltering in place next to a window. Bathrooms typically don't have windows in them. That's another good place to be. Closets in the hallway. But stay away from windows, your front door, your back door, any exterior walls, because they're going to be the first things that are going to collapse in a tornado. Of course, schools, that's a whole different story. We're not in school. We won't be in school during the tornado season, but we all have very specific procedures that we use in school for a place where we would go to be safe. What if you're in your car and suddenly you see a tornado? Now, if you see a tornado developing while you're in your car, the best thing to do is to pull over and actually get out of the vehicle. And you might think, well, why would we do that when we're safe inside our car? Well, simply stated, the tornado can pick your car up and fling it to wherever it decides it wants to. So don't stay in the car. Try to get into a sturdy building nearby if you can, or a storm shelter. Don't hide under the vehicle. That's not being very smart either. If you can't get to a building and there's no place for you to go, then the only smart thing to do at that point is buckle your seatbelt and hope you don't go for a ride. If you happen to live in a mobile home, they're extremely vulnerable because they're not very heavy, they're not anchored well to the earth, and it's easy for them to be damaged or even picked up and moved, thrown. If you're outside and you have no shelter around you, what you need to do is get to the lowest place you can. If there's a ditch on the side of the road, get down in the ditch. Get below the surface. That's the safest thing for you to do. I remember reading somewhere too that if there's a tornado, don't park your car underneath an overpass. And you might think, well, geez, that seems like a pretty safe place to be. You've got this heavy, strong overpass over top of your head. But at the same time, I can imagine that because of the huge vacuum that can occur because of the imbalance of the air pressures, that being underneath the bridge isn't going to guarantee you're not going to get sucked out from underneath that bridge. And then there's always the chance that it could actually bring the bridge down, that overpass on top of you. Not a good place to be. I wouldn't go there in a tornado. I would try to find some safe shelter first. It says here that highway overpasses offer no protection from tornadoes' direct hit, and they should never be used. The safest course of action is to get out of the path. Now, understand, you're not going to outrun a tornado, and sometimes even in your car, you're not going to outrun the tornado. And because there's no predictability to which way it'll go, you could end up driving right into it. Or it could change course and drive right into you. Get to shelter. Shelter is the primary thing, and as low as you can. If you happen to be at a mall or in some large building, they usually have a designated area. So put on your listening cap and follow whatever directions that they can give you there. Now, what can you do at home? Well, you can have a plan. If something should happen like this, and it doesn't necessarily even have to be a tornado, it can be any type of emergency, you should have a fire escape plan. A tornado plan, you get together and you figure out, okay, what do we got to do? Where are we going to shelter? Where are we going to go? And then, conduct a drill every now and then, just so people get familiar with what they should do. And always try to be prepared. A flashlight, a battery-operated radio. It's nice to have a few extra batteries in case the flashlight decides to die. A spare set of keys somewhere that you can get to for your car or for your house. Having some water, non-perishable foods, a cell phone, and a cell phone charger. Although the charger doesn't do you much good if the electricity goes out and you don't have any electricity to charge your phone. You should always try to keep your phone charged. I'm always kind of amused by people that text me and say, "Oh, sorry, my phone was dead." Well, I charge my phone every day. And when I head out of the house, my phones are fully charged. So I don't have to worry if something happens. I know my phone's going to work. And it's always a good plan to have some blankets. You can even put these kind of items in your car in case you're out and about during an emergency. Now, how fast can the wind go in a tornado? Well, they have different ratings. You've heard of the EF wind speed measuring. And so an EF 0, that's winds of 65 to 85 miles an hour. So if the tornado's an EF 0, it's still strong enough to knock trees over and take out power lines. EF 1 is 86 to 110 miles an hour. An EF2 goes up to 135 miles an hour. EF3, 165. And then an EF4. And we've seen those in Ohio with winds up to 200 miles an hour. And if we ever have to endure an EF5, that's winds in excess of 200 miles per hour. So, severe weather preparedness. We know that this weather is dangerous. Be prepared, know how to seek shelter, have a plan, and watch out for lightning. Lightning is an extremely dangerous thing. Now, what I have here is a way to simulate a tornado. This is put out by Discovery Kids, and this is one of those science things that we can do. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start this, and the original tornado that it will form will be one of about an EF 0, but then we'll take it all the way up to an EF 5 as far as this demonstration can go. So let's watch a tornado form. Now you're seeing the instability in the wind starting to affect it. And you see the tornado vortex form. Now as we increase, we see it starting to move much faster, having a much greater impact on the area around it. And when we turn it up all the way, you better hope you're not a cow standing out in the middle of the pasture, because you're going to go for the ride of your life. Now, I wish that there was some way I could let you look down inside this tornado, because there is a viewing hole on top of it. So next year in science classes, we'll let people look at that, but what you see is an empty space in the middle of this vortex. And it's because a low pressure has been created on the inside of this moving bunch of air. So everything on the outside is trying to get to the inside. And it obviously is picking up everything along the way as it seeks to balance that difference in the air pressure between the outside and the inside of a tornado. But you can look right down it. As a matter of fact, if I could stick my finger down it, my finger wouldn't even get wet because there's no water on the inside of this tornado. So anyhow, here's a pretty good visual of what a tornado looks like in the funnel cloud that's formed because of the instability between the moist warm air and the cold air colliding. This is what it sounds like. Now you've heard people say, geez, it sounded like a freight train coming right at me. And that's a pretty accurate description of what it sounds like. Kind of like a freight train coming at you. So kids, parents, everybody, let's tame this tornado a little bit. Here we go. That's our science lesson. By the way, April 22nd is Earth Day, where we take time out of our busy lives and celebrate the Earth. And a big part of what is our earthly environment is the weather around us. So I hope this has been useful information for you. You can always go to the National Weather Service's website, and I'm sure they have all kinds of fun stuff and activities even for kids to learn about weather and how to be safe in all kinds of weather. So that's our lesson in science for everyone today. I hope you have a nice day. It seems like a nice day outside, but pay attention to those watches and warnings. Take care of yourselves, stay safe. Always be kind to other people and your family, and we'll talk to you again soon.